Hello! In today's video, I am giving you a really quick and really simple exercise to do, which is basically retraining your load joints. So by your load joints, what I mean is your ankles, your knee, your hips, your shoulders. Retraining your load joints to all stack over each other in the correct position. And the reason I'm doing this is because I did a posture workshop last week, which was really, really interesting for me to do. And it really highlighted to me how much I flare my rib cage. So I think that I'm doing stuff correctly, but actually I really want to flare with my rib cage because I lack mobility in other parts of my body. And the exercise that we're going to do is literally just standing up with our backs against a wall. Because for most people, what this is doing and what this is changing in comparison to how they normally stand is their pelvic position. So the vast majority of people, if you look at them, when they stand up, their hips are slightly further forward than their shoulders and their ankles. They're this kind of like banana shape like this. So most people sway forward with their pelvis and then they fall backwards with their shoulders. And it's their body's way of compensating for a lack of strength and or mobility around the hip area most of the time. So their body kind of shunts the pelvis forward because it makes it easier for the body to balance the upper half of the body. And when you stand back against the wall, like we're about to do in a second, what you will notice is it's bringing that pelvis back over the ankles where it belongs. And for lots of people, that can feel really strange, and it can feel very, very different through either their mid to lower back, which might feel like it arches loads, or possibly through their shoulders and their neck, which really feel like they're kind of coming forward and off the wall. So standing at the wall for most people is an exercise that I think is actually really worthwhile to do because it's waking up that posterior chain of muscles that are going to help pull you back over your body. But if you can't stand at the wall without having a really kind of aggressive flare through your rib cage, it's not the exercise for you to do right now because that rib cage is compensating for tightness, very likely through your hip flexors. So because of where the hip flexors connect, if those guys, because they're literally like right at the bottom of the rib cage there, all the way down to the groin, if those guys can't lengthen in the way that is required to bring your rib cage down, you will have to have a flared rib cage to stand with your back against the wall. So it's telling you that you need to do more stuff around your pelvis and around your hips before you're going to be able to more functionally stand up straight. Sounds a bit scary, but most of us cannot stand up straight. So what we're going to do is we're just going to bring our body back against a wall like so. So you're keeping in contact with the wall with your ankles, with your calves, with your bottom. And before you do anything else, just notice how that feels, because it might feel very strange. You might feel like you're kind of leaning forward off the wall. You might feel like you've got a huge arch in your lower back because those tight hips are kind of dragging you down and they can't cope with the fact that they've been put back over the ankles. So you're trying to keep your heels back against the wall. You're also looking at the direction of your feet. So are your feet straight or are your toes facing out to the side? You want to try and keep your feet straight, if not slightly pigeon-toed, because that is the opposite for most people, but only do this if it's comfortable for you. If this is uncomfortable for you, other things need to change first before this exercise is the right one for you to do. So I really don't want to have to write caveats in every single caption that I ever write, but try these exercises. If they feel wrong, stop the exercise. So you're going to try and stand with slightly pigeon-toed feet, pushing that lower half of your body back against the wall. And actually what you should feel is a gentle arch in your lower back. We want there to be a little bit of an arch in your lower back. And you should feel like you are able to put your rib cage down. So you want to feel like the bony bits of your hips here are stacked in the same, I don't know how to describe it, like at the same height and level as your rib cage. So my rib cage wants to tip upwards and flare upwards, so I stick my chest to the ceiling, creating more of an arch through my lower back and pandering to that tightness through my hips, versus pulling the rib cage down slightly so that the bony bit here at the bottom of my ribs matches up with the bony bit of my pelvis. And when I do that, What that's doing is it's engaging my hips differently in this area. So I'm controlling that ribcage flare, pulling that back down. It makes me feel a little bit different around my shoulders, but crucially for me, and this is what I picked up when I did this posture workshop the other day, I feel the arch of my right foot lifting up. So I know that my right leg pronates, the ankle kind of falls in, and I find it difficult to control that ankle. And by pulling my rib cage down slightly like this, but keeping my bottom against the wall, this engages the hip flexor differently, and I can feel the arch of my foot waking up. So when I'm not at the wall, it's quite difficult for me to do this because I don't really have a sense of like where my hips are and am I wonky or what are my shoulders doing. But the wall is a really helpful tool to just remind you whether or not you are actually standing up straight, and if your calves are back. So lots of people walk around and live their lives with an internally kind of bentness through their knees, flexion through their knees. We don't want that. We want your knees to be able to bend and straighten out, so flex and extend. So this is a good exercise for that as well. So you just want to stand here basically and just see how you feel. Like, is it unbelievably hard work for your calves to switch on when your feet are straight? If so, do more work on your feet. Do you feel a massive stretch through your hips when you're doing this? If so, do more work to stack your pelvis back over your feet. Do you feel like one side of your pelvis doesn't want to touch the wall evenly to the other side? If so, do more work to de-rotate your pelvis. Like, the list goes on, but just standing like this will tell you a lot. And really, really try and focus on that rib cage, okay? So this is not about grabbing onto the wall dramatically and trying to get your head back to touch the floor. Sorry, to touch the floor, to touch the wall. Because actually what this is doing is it's just pandering to that tightness through that psoas muscle in the middle here. You've got to think about keeping your rib cage down and holding it, and you're trying to be as relaxed as possible. This should be easy. Standing should be easy for humans to do. It literally goes without saying. But because we spend so much time being sat down, standing up actually gets really hard. So just give this a go. Try and hold it for a couple of minutes. And if you try and do that for a couple of minutes every single hour during your working day, I bet you're going to very, very quickly wake up lots of muscles that don't normally wake up. But once again, it goes without saying, do not push through pain. If doing that hurts you, other stuff needs to change first before you do that exercise. So standing up for lots of people is really hard because there's a lot of stuff going wrong. So don't push through pain. Do what feels right to your body. But if that feels like just kind of hard work and useful, do it. But if it hurts you, don't do it. So yeah, I feel like I've just kind of put a bit of a mind dump on you without really thinking what I was going to say before I made this video. But stand up straight. But standing up straight is not about just like pulling your shoulders back and flaring the rib cage. It's about restacking that pelvis over your ankles and keeping your rib cage down. Don't think about your shoulders in the first instance. Work your way up. So it's like feet back against wall, calves back against wall, knees not back against wall but not bent, bum back against the wall, and then not trying to have that flaring through your rib cage. You're pulling that rib cage down so that these bony bits are aligned rather than the rib cage flaring, because I know that I'm a massive rib cage flarer.